Welcome back to the SwimSwam Breakdown. I'm Coleman Hodges, joined by Yin Yin Lee from Evanston, Illinois. Evanston, right?
Yeah,
I'm
Evanston. You got
all
it right.
right. She's at Northwestern. I'm in Austin, Texas. Happy 2024 to all you swimmers and swammers out there. Yin Yin, what was the best thing you got for Christmas this year?
What was the best thing I got for Christmas? Oh God, like I forgot. This is not that I'm ungrateful, but I just don't remember everything that I got for Christmas at the top of my head. Well, I'm currently reading American Prometheus, which is the book that the movie Oppenheimer is based on. I got that book for
Ooh.
Christmas, so I'm reading it now. So I like that gift.
That's my brother talked a lot about that book, and he would be very excited to hear that you're reading it.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Nice. My favorite Christmas gift was also a book from my brother called Lessons in Chemistry, which I'm enjoying reading right now. So look at us, just a couple of bookworms.
Coleman, you're into chemistry?
No, it's it's a little bit of a misleading title. I mean, it's a fiction book. It's sort of about chemistry, but also like relationships and chemistry in that way.
I see.
Um, but it's about two chemists who fall in love, or so far it is. So I can see why he liked it because he is a scientist also. All right. Well, enough about literature. Let's get down to swimming. It's a new year. It's been kind of quiet, and yet somehow we still have quite a bit to talk about, which I'm pretty excited to get into. First of all, the Knoxville Pro Swim starts tomorrow, Wednesday night, with the distance events. Just we've got a stacked site sheet coming into this Tennessee Pro Swim. Yin Yin, what are you most excited for heading into Knoxville?
I am already so annoying about this, and I will continue to be annoying about this. But you already know what's coming, right?
Kate Douglas.
Well, I was gonna say Summer McIntosh versus Kate Douglas versus Alex Walsh in the 200 IM. And now I feel like it's confirmed that Summer McIntosh is actually swimming the 200 IM because it's on the same day as the 400 free, and she's not swimming the 400 free. So we're finally gonna get to see that Summer McIntosh versus Kate Douglas showdown that we've wanted to see for over a year, but that's never happened because Summer McIntosh keeps on scratching it. So I'm excited that we're finally, well, hopefully, gonna see this event happen.
I really like and respect Summer McIntosh and her coach's decision to basically every meet she swims a different event lineup in some way, right? She switches up one or two or five events from meet to meet. And I really like how you can tell that she is honing her versatility and just swimming everything so that A, she can have experience racing in a lot of events, and B, she can also not get burnt out on any one or two events, which I think as a 17-year-old who's already a world record holder and world champion is very, very smart. So,
Yeah, for sure. But that also leads me to my question of at these big meets, is she gonna be swimming all of those events at once? Like, is that all gonna come together, or is she gonna do what she does at smaller meets and maybe like be selective, which she hasn't done her full load of all five of her main events ever at a big meet, and I'm just questioning like whether we'll see a day where that happens. And honestly, like if that doesn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised because again, as you said, like it wouldn't be good for her to burn out. But then on the other hand, there's always that like lingering question, like what could she do?
I agree. I mean, it's interesting because we saw Michael Phelps do something like this, right? And he was obviously one of a kind, but I think pretty much since then we see many athletes err on the side of caution when it comes, especially when it comes to an Olympic Games, um, to put their eggs in a few baskets, like two to four, probably two to three, rather than four or five individual events, even if they can swim that many. And it would be awesome to see Summer McIntosh swim five individual events plus relays at an Olympic Games, right? But is it the smartest decision for her, especially this being her first Olympics where she is heavily favored to win multiple gold medals? Probably not, right? It's probably a safer bet for her to focus on 3 individual events, maybe 4, and really hone in on those and shoot for gold medals in those. Which I can't blame her and her coach's decision on that one, but as a fan, it's like, go for 8 medals, right? Like, that would be awesome. That would be something we have not seen at an Olympics or at a major meet at all in long course in a long time, right? But I just I don't I don't really see it happening.
Yeah, and I think this all goes to show just how extraordinary Phelps was during his 2008 run. And the thing is, like, that's supposed to be a measure of like greatness, but it's also like not the only standard for greatness. Like there's so many other ways of like achieving accomplishments in swimming without having to like do what Phelps did. And Phelps he did burn out towards like the end of his career. And I'm not saying anyone who takes on a lot of events is gonna burn out, but like it is something you have to think about. And just because you're not doing and taking on the load that he's taking on, like that doesn't make you less of a swimmer. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, and like sort of like swimming's like becoming, I feel like especially on the men's side, becoming more like compartmentalized.
Absolutely. And I think when Phelps was at the peak of his career, he had he had a fair amount of demons that swimming was kind of his sanctuary to combat, and he's discussed that, from his home life to his personal life. I think towards the end of his career, when he did kind of have burnout, and then he was having issues outside of the pool, and then he went to treatment and got in therapy and became a huge mental health advocate. And now I think, in terms of mental health, taking on such a huge event load is really, really stressful,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like, that's probably outside of just your physical, how tired you will get in an 8 or 9 day meet. It's probably not mentally healthy to train your body and mind to be swimming at a high level that many times and that many days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's probably like that probably will lead you to burnout sooner rather
Mm-hmm.
than later.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's like it's a feat that it's really hard to do, especially at an Olympic Games. And he did it twice, right? He had 2 Olympics where he medaled in 8 events. Which is, yeah, again, it's just insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anywho, back to Knoxville. That's going to be super exciting. If you're still with us, just to list some of the athletes that are going to be competing in Knoxville. We got Kate Douglas, Caleb Dressel, Bobby Fink, Tori Husk, Lydia Jacoby, Lily King, Katie Ledecky, Simone Manuel, Maggie McNeil, Summer McIntosh, Ryan Murphy, not Reagan Smith. I think that's one
No.
of the biggest stories, right? Is that
Yeah.
Reagan is now had mono. She's out with sickness. I hope she's doing better, and I hope she's on the recovery side and just kind of taking it easy.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, like both Reagan Smith and Leon Marchand having mono, because they're two of the biggest stars of the Paris Olympic Games, and we've seen in the past where like people like Gregorio Poltrineri, he had mono, and like it's kind of assumed that that may have affected his performance in Tokyo, and he did have mono a little later than when Reagan and Leon got it, but I'm very interested into seeing how this affects both of their build ups like into the Olympics, especially for Leon, because like if something happens to him, like that would be like really unfortunate, because this is his home Olympics, and you really only get a chance like once in your life to compete at home Olympics. So I hope both of them recover from that, but it's definitely something to like look out for. And Leon's already competing in like dual meets and stuff, but like I mean, I hope like this doesn't affect their performance in any way. That's what I meant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would think they're going to err on the side of caution, especially in terms of like heading into conference and NC2As, which is really a bummer because like I feel like this is probably going to affect the chance of him going best times and yards events. Um, because he just went completely berserk last year at NC2As, and B, those times are just so hard to match. Like he was on it at NC's last year, right? And that is a result of an entire season going pretty much perfectly. And this season has not gone perfectly for him. When I was at ASU, I think this interview is coming out within the next 24 hours. But he talked about he's had sinus issues this season. He had mono. He had his wisdom teeth removed.
Oh no.
So it's like things that he's been able to recover from. Like obviously he was training well when I was there. He was still kicking everyone's butt. But, you know, it's you don't want to see that in an Olympic lead up ever, right? You want everything to be as perfect as possible. And obviously it won't be. And maybe this will be a good thing. I don't know. But yeah, I'm hoping for the best for both of them. And really hoping that we see Reagan and Leon at future pro swims leading into these Olympic trials and Olympic games so that we can kind of get a gauge at where they're at.
Yeah, ultimately, I think both of them will end up being fine. Leon was going pretty fast at the ASU versus Grand Canyon dual meet last weekend. He went 132 in the 200 free and 42.3 in the 100 free, which are insane times
That's
right
so
now.
fast.
So yeah, I think they'll be fine, but it's more of like I'm interested just to see if might be like a one thing leads to another sort of thing, which hopefully it won't be. And also, I looked it up, but Paltrinieri, he had mono in June, so that's like a very different timeline.
Right.
Like June before the Olympics.
I do feel like that getting sick is almost underrated in some senses because it forces you, especially mono, it just forces you to rest, right? Like the only recovery for it is to chill and let your body get over it. And so I feel like in that sense, like a lot of times people will swim really, really well when they're either sick or they are just getting over being sick, even if they haven't like trained as hard in the lead up to that, or they're currently fighting off an illness because they're taking extra good care of themselves. You know, it's basically like you're on a taper. And so obviously that's not what you want 6 months out from the Olympics, but maybe the extra rest was actually helping them or will actually help them moving forward. You know, maybe they'll be able to work a little harder in this next training cycle. Or, you know, with Bob Bowman, I think the fall is when they really put in a lot of their base work. And I think for both of them, a lot of the hay is probably in the proverbial barn. So if they're able to make comebacks, I wouldn't be too worried about their aerobic capacity, especially long course. So back to Knoxville, won't see Reagan Smith. But one thing I am excited to see in this upcoming Olympic season is the athletes who will be competing in Doha just a few weeks after Knoxville. So we've got Kate Douglas, Claire Curzon, Michael Andrew, Nick Fink, among others, who will be swimming in Knoxville. And then just a few weeks later, heading to Doha for a World Championships. I'll be excited to see where they're at. And just a few weeks out from a World Championships, which we'll talk more about later in the podcast. But I think it'll be interesting to see how they approach this meet versus everyone else who's probably coming off a pretty hard block of winter training. I'm guessing their winter training might not have been quite as intense. And I think nowadays winter training is probably different for every team, and there might be a little bit of approach. I think the days of like, all right, 2 weeks of just poundage is maybe not the norm anymore.
Yeah, for sure. But I'm also like not really expecting anything too different from the people who are swimming in Doha. Because I don't think Doha's a meet that a lot of people are tapering for. I think it's mainly to like get that kind of like international experience. I'd be surprised to see if anyone was in like full taper mode.
Well, the thing about a lot of those athletes is that they're kind of always in taper mode.
Oh yeah.
And not obviously not full taper mode, but like the four I mentioned, Claire, Kate, Michael Andrew, Nick Fink, like they can pretty much swim fast anytime,
Yeah.
which is great. You know, that's what you want to see from pro athletes like that. And Claire, who's basically been a pro athlete since she's freaking 16 years old,
Yeah.
not a pro athlete, she's a college athlete, but you know, they all know how to kind of get it done in season as well as in postseason, and so again, just excited to see them race and to get their perspective in Knoxville about how they're going to prepare in that few weeks time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's enough. That's enough about the pro swim.
Are you going?
I am going. I'll be there on Thursday and Friday, so I'll be there at finals, getting interviews. I'll be on deck. If you're there, come say hi. I'll be the guy with the hair. If you want to watch, SwimSwam's got all the links for you. I'm assuming USA Swimming will be streaming prelims and finals, so head over to SwimSwam. We'll get you hooked up. We'll have all the results, live recaps. You know the drill. And if you don't, just head to SwimSwam and you'll figure it out. If you want to,
SwimSwam's always the answer.
it's always the answer. All right, next up, hot ticket item. Mewen Tomac has committed to Cal for the 2024-2025 NCAA season. Mewen Tomac is preparing for his home Olympics. He is French. He's a French record holder in the backstrokes. And this took a lot of people by surprise because there's a lot of factors that go into this. We've seen internationals commit to a college. We've seen internationals who are a bit older than your traditional 16, 17, 18-year-old high school students commit to NCAA colleges. And that has especially because we've seen older swimmers older than 22 years old, compete in the NCAA. That has become more common with the COVID fifth years and the effects of the pandemic. But there's a lot of factors here. So let's just break them down and have a conversation about this. I think the first thing is Mewen is 4 years removed from high school. So he's 22 right now. He also competed in the ISL, which was, it's a pro league. And so that for many of us, it seemed like it meant that you were a professional athlete and non-eligible to compete in the NCAA. Among others, that's why everyone thought Summer McIntosh was not eligible / not going to be competing in the NCAA. Mewen did not get paid when he was in the ISL, or so we're told. So perhaps that could be a loophole that makes him eligible for the NCAA. He is also only receiving 2 years of eligibility at Cal, so assumably the 24-25 season and the 25-26 season.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that being said, Yin, thoughts on Mewen Tomac committing to Cal for 2024?
Well, my first thought after reading this news wasn't the age and it wasn't ISL. I was thinking, is he actually going to show up at Cal? Because we've already seen twice 2 international backstrokers, Masuk and then Peter Kutzi. Both of them committed for 2024 and neither of them showed up. I do think there's a greater chance of him showing up to Cal than previous international commits because the 2024 season is literally this year in a few months. But no, that is my one main concern because we've seen, especially recently, how a lot of swimmers commit to colleges and they don't show up, or they only show up for a few months and never compete again, like Noe Ponte and then Ahmed Hefnawi, who apparently is not on the Indiana roster anymore. So that's something. And then when it comes to his age and his professional status, I don't think the age is as big of a deal as people think it is because he's only getting 2 years of eligibility. Like someone said, his last championships will be in 2026 and he's 24 then. Yesterday in the college football national championship, the quarterback at Washington, Michael Penix Jr., he's 23. He's like a sixth-year senior, I believe. So this kind of stuff is pretty common in college sports. So Mewen Tomac doing it isn't something that's super out of the ordinary. But I think ISL is the main concern and the main talking point here because I think this raises the question of like what constitutes a pro athlete, and it also like raises the question of like does the NCAA see like a professional swimming league like ISL being a legitimate league, especially with people not being paid as well as pro swimming, and which is very niche, and um, the fact that it was only around for like 2 or 3 years, I think Mew and Tomac being allowed to compete despite being in the ISL sort of speaks to the fact that like maybe the NCAA or like people involved like they don't really see the ISL as like a legitimate pro league, and obviously him not getting paid might have something to do with that. So I just thought that was interesting. I don't know, I could be wrong, but Holman, I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, like that talking point.
Yeah, I mean, if the NCAA didn't consider the ISL a pro league, it wouldn't be that big of a shock because, again, it was super novel and really cool for the swimming community. But you compare it to an NBA or an NFL or, even smaller pro leagues for other sports, it's just like, yeah, that's not really the same. It's like, this is cute. Glad you guys are making some money, but come on. So I wouldn't be surprised if
Yeah,
the
but who gets to
NCAA,
decide that though? Like, who gets to decide if he's eligible? That's
the NCAA, yeah, I don't know. And I think you brought up a good point. The fact that it was only around for 2 or 3 years, like maybe they changed their mind recently about how they feel about it, right? Like maybe while it was a thing, they were like, okay, no, you can't do this. But now that's not a thing, they're like, well, it's fine. Especially if athletes weren't getting paid. I think we're trying to talk to someone about this. I know we reached out to Cal's compliance person, but hopefully we can get some answers in the near future because, yeah, it's really interesting. There's this situation is very nuanced, and we don't really know the people making the decisions and what their thinking is about said decisions. Um, but I mean, my opinion, if you didn't get paid in the ISL, then yeah, it's like you participated in a pro league, but you weren't a professional in it because you didn't get paid. Like that's
yeah.
the whole definition of being a professional is
Mhm.
making money off of it. I don't really have a problem with him with this situation in particular. I think the more people who can get exposed to NCAA swimming, the better, because I think it's a really unique system, and hopefully he gets an educational piece from it as well as getting to train with the best backstrokers in the world. And, I think we've seen the ASU has been the most recent example of this, but when people get together and train at a really high level from around the world, swimming gets better. And I think that's what we want to see. That's what I want to see.
Oh,
Um,
of course. But
yeah.
referring to your point about Summer McIntosh and how ISL has been our main argument against her not
Mhm.
doing the NCAA, I don't think she's doing the NCAA, period. Like, regardless of that.
I don't think so either. I don't think it would make sense for her where she's at for her career. I mean, Yeah, I understand if she had a desire, a personal desire to swim on a college team because again, that's a really unique experience. It's kind of once in a lifetime thing, and if that's something you want, I totally understand that. To this point, up to this point, it doesn't seem like something she wants, and it professionally it doesn't really make sense. Um, Especially if she goes to this Olympics and wins 3 gold medals, right? So don't don't blame her if she doesn't, or if that's not what she wants, because yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for her swimming wise. But if she was also like, hey, I want to break a bunch of short course yards records, then it's like, dude, yeah, do it.
I mean, if she wants to do that, she can just pull up to US Open next year. That's in
I
Lawrence.
I love that people got so excited for that meet to go back to
Mhm.
yards.
Yeah.
That was really great.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I think my last talking point for Mewen Tomac is like we saw with Noe Ponti, if he wins a medal at a home Olympics, that could change the trajectory of his career. So it will be to
Mewen
circle.
Tomac, you mean? You said.
What did
Did
I
you say
say?
Noe Ponti?
So similar to what happened with Noe Ponti.
Oh, okay, I see.
He won a medal at an Olympics. It
Mhm.
wasn't even a home Olympics. And I think that changed the trajectory of his career, right? It changed how he was perceived in his home country. He came to NC State for a month or two and then was like, I need to go home. This isn't right. I want to be at home. And totally understandable. So if Mewen wins a medal at his home Olympics, he could be a freaking superstar. And then he might have it made for the rest of his life. And it's like, well, I don't really need to go to Cal now. So circling back to your original point, it will be interesting to see how he does in Paris, as well as if that affects him actually showing up. So only time will tell. But with that, let's move on to a whole bunch of sink or swims. First up today on Sink or Swim, SwimSwam published the 2024 NCAA midseason scoring updates for the men and women. We're going to start with the men. On the men's side, we had ASU coming in at 566, Florida coming in second at 340, and Cal third at 281.5. Now, we know that these must be taken with a grain of salt. We know this is not totally accurate. However, ASU leading by over 200 points is quite staggering. So sink or swim, men's NC2As will be a blowout win for Arizona State.
How do you define blowout?
80 points.
80 points. Okay. I think they'll win by 100, but no more than 100. Because I'm not
That's a blowout.
surprised. I'm not surprised that they're leading by a considerable margin, but I do think it's important to consider that Cal always shows up with March Magic. And I don't think it'll get them as far as it has in previous years, just because ASU is so good in every category. Zelen's Sarkani's 14:28 mile just gave them another extra 10 or 20 points. I mean, he scored last year, I believe, but now he's like a NCAA title favorite. But I do think that Cal didn't show all of their cards during mid seasons. Jack Alexi wasn't swimming at his fastest. I think Destin Lasco got DQ'd in an event. There are a lot of factors, and I ultimately think that they're gonna be considerably better than they were in mid seasons, like they usually are. But I do think like ASU star power is just too much this year, but it will be closer than 200 points.
So you're swimming a blowout.
I'm swimming a blowout, but not in a way that, not like that. Wait, no. Actually, I'm thinking it. I think they're gonna win by like around like 70, 80 points, but not 100. Because I'm realizing that the UVA won by like 100 points last year. So I think the margin will be less than the UVA women won NCAAs by last year.
I'm sinking it as well. I do think this is ASU's year. They've kind of put a lot of eggs in this basket. We don't know what Leon's future holds after this NCAA season, but we know that his goal as well as the team goal is getting that historic NCAA title for Arizona State. And I think they're going to do it. I think the addition of, Ilya Karun has just been I can't think of the word, but paramount. He is just like, oh my God, 3 event score plus relay, 4 relay swimmer, just like that. And like Cal doesn't have anyone like that, and they really needed one, I think, to be competitive. I see the meet being somewhere between 50 and 70 points. I think Cal always has a great last day, but especially with the addition of Zarkani now for ASU in the mile, where Cal doesn't have anyone super strong in that distance event. I think ASU's depth is gonna, their top end depth. They have 8 to 10 guys who can all score in 2+ events. And Cal always kind of has those sleeper swimmers that end up scoring in 1 or 2 events. But like you said, I don't think it's going to be quite enough this year.
Yeah, and the fact that they lost Aaron Shackle, who's one of their most promising freshmen, that doesn't really help their cause either.
It does not. I forgot about that. But yeah, and I think Cal can have some impact freshmen who maybe even score individually, again, in 1 or 2 events, but they don't have, an Ilya Karun who's just comes in and immediately notches in 7 events that are, and I'm like, well, Cal's relays were really good last year. And then I'm like, oh yeah, Arizona State's relays were also elite. Also top 1 or 2 last year. And so I think, I don't see it being a blowout, but I see it a Sun Devil win.
Yeah.
All right. Going to the women's side. It is Virginia leading, but it's close. So right now, Virginia 423, Texas 404.5. These are projected scores.
Well, UVA also doesn't have a proper 800 free relay.
It's true. They don't swim the 800 free relay at midseason. This is a documented phenomena. They skip it. They're like, we don't want to bother. We'd rather our kids get an extra hour of sleep. We're not doing the 8 free relay at midseason. And you know what? I like it. I can't fault them one bit for skipping this, because there's no real reason to swim it. They don't need the practice, in my opinion. So sink or swim for the women's NC2As, the meet will be within 30 points.
I'm gonna sink it. I think Virginia is gonna dominate like they have every single year since 2021. And my evidence: Alex Walsh, Gretchen Walsh, Jasmine Nocentini, Ella Nelson, Amy Kenny. I could go on and on and on.
These are good points you raise. I think it is a bummer for Texas that Jillian Cox ended up redshirting, because she could have been a significant scorer. I think I would swim it if it was 40 points. I think it's going to be close. I think Texas is going to lay it out there. They have a lot of really good swimmers, and they have a lot of really experienced swimmers at this point, along with a couple really solid freshmen who I think might have some surprising swims come conference and NCs. You know what? I'm just going to swim it for fun. I think Texas will get it within 30. And you know what? Maybe UVA dekes a relay, and we have a 2016 situation where Texas like pulls out a win. Who knows?
I mean, I want it to be close. I think close NCAA meets are fun.
I agree.
But I think just another factor for midseason was that Jasmine Nocentini didn't really go all out in midseasons because she was preparing for short course Euros. But yeah, I just don't. I think it will be closer than last year, but it won't be decided by 30 points. Like I think that's just too close a margin with like the depth that UVA has, and I'm also like more confident in UVA performing well at NCAAs because we saw last year a lot of the Texas swimmers laid an egg at NCAAs after like being really promising in season. So like whereas like most of Virginia's top swimmers, like I know they're like saving everything for the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. That's where I have some confidence, is that I think the Texas swimmers will learn from last year, and I'm hoping they will be at their best at NCs.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right, next up on Sink or Swim. Will any man, going back to men's NC2As, we saw Aiden Hayes go a 20.36 50 backstroke suited in practice during winter training. No, this is not a stopwatch time. There were touch pads in the pool. There is video evidence. You can watch it on SwimSwam. 20.36. It is legit from Mr. Aiden Hayes of NC State. Defending NC2A champion in the 200 fly, and he rips a 20.350 backstroke. Sink or swim, we will see any man go under 20.0 in the 50-yard backstroke at NC2As.
It's so funny because I feel like in short course yards, backstroke, freestyle, and butterfly are all just interconnected because I thought Aiden Hayes was a flyer, but I didn't realize he could do all that in backstroke. I mean, I guess he has a 20.7 50 back, but like I've always thought of him as a flyer. And then Luke Miller, like I thought of him as like a 200 freestyle, 100 freestyle guy, but then he just like pops a 44 1 100 fly, so it's all interconnected as long as it's not breaststroke. Unless you're Kate Douglas.
Truly.
Anyways, but I think we are gonna see a sub 1950 back at NCAAs because it's just bound to happen. Bjorn Seeliger went 20.0 2 years ago, I believe, and NCAAs is just getting faster and faster, so it's about time.
I've been saying this was going to happen since 2016. And I told Dave Durden in 2016, it's happening. Ryan Murphy's going 19 and a 50 backstroke. And Dave Durden said, no, he's not. And Dave Durden was right. He didn't. It was really disappointing. He went 20.2. And since then, we've seen Bjorn go 20.08. We've seen Kasper Stokowski and Adam Chaney go 20.1. I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, Coleman. Okay.
I'm sinking it. It's, I think people are becoming better swimmers. They're going really fast. It helps that the 200 medley relay is the first event of the first day of conference and NC2As. I think I said NC2As in the question, but we'll include conference meets in this too. I see some 20-point lows coming in, and I don't see a 19.9 happening. But I hope it does.
Coleman Hodges doesn't like fast swimming.
I hate it. I hate fast swimming. It's the antithesis of my existence. All right. Next up on sink or swim, Chen Haiyang not going to the 2024 Doha World Championships for China. That means he will not defend his world titles in the 50, 100, or 200 breaststroke. But you know what breaststroke world champion will be in Doha? Adam Peaty. Will Adam Peaty win a 4th world title in Doha in the 50 or 100 breast?
I'm going to sink it because you know who else is also in Doha? Nicola Martinenghi, Nick Fink, Arno Kaminga. All of them have been passed faster than Adam Peaty in 2023. And I just don't see anything from Adam Peaty that's convincing enough for me to think that he's going to win a world title. Like, I just don't see it.
It's hard because for where Adam Peaty is in coming back to the pool as well as this Olympics, he was going to want to be trending in the right direction, right? And not to say that the other swimmers won't be, but for Nick Fink, he's getting kind of old. And I want to see him flourish this year, obviously, but he worries me a little because he's getting kind of old. Nicola Martinenghi has been really good lately, but I don't think he's unbeatable. Same with Arno. Arno has certainly been less consistent in the past 18 months than he has the prior 18 months before that of his career. So I think he has as good of a shot to win one of those events as any of those other swimmers. And it will be really exciting to see what happens because I'm sure at least one of them will be swimming quite well. So I'm going to swim it. I think he can win at least one, the 50 or the 100. I think it will be interesting to see where each of those events is at for Adam, especially because I'm guessing he's focusing more on the 100 because of the Olympics and because the 50 breast is not at the Olympics. But it'll be interesting to see if he's got that patented PD back half down, or if that's coming along, or if he's got more speed at this point in his preparation and maybe the 50 is a little bit better.
I think he's gonna do better in the 50 just because, like, again, basing this off of past evidence, like at the World Cups, like he was consistently like only losing the chin in the 50 breast, whereas like in the 100, I think there's maybe more competition. Like I'm pretty sure his season best in the 50 is like right around what got bronze at Worlds last year. So I think he has more of a chance in the 50, but I'm not entirely sure if he's gonna win. But it's definitely more likely in the 50 than the 100. But I'm gonna sink it just because like there's a lot of competition in both events.
X Factor. He's got more tattoos than anyone else in that field. So think on that, swimmers and swimmers. And finally, we wrote several articles and had 2 polls asking what your favorite storyline for the men and women's side heading into this Olympic year were. So Yin Yin, what storyline most excites you heading into these 2024 Olympic Games?
I think the storyline that most excites me is how the Americans will perform, because last year was their worst showing at an international meet, Worlds or Olympics, since I believe 1994, and headed into an Olympic year that isn't great, because not just for team morale, but just because in general, like, I feel like to a mainstream audience, like, they want to, like, in the US, like, they want to see swimming succeed because swimming has historically been one of the Americans' best sports. They know about Michael Phelps, Katie Ledecky. It's always like you turn on the TV and like it's the US dominating, and I feel like there's a lot of pressure put on them every 4 years, and I feel like people are kind of like it's gonna be a bit of a culture shock for like 4-year only viewers to see that like the Americans aren't what they typically are in past years. So I'm really curious to see like if that happens and how the public will react to it.
It's a good point. I mean, I think there's a good chance that the Americans could be what they normally are, but that, the Olympics is always kind of a crapshoot, because it's a very high pressure situation. There's lots of factors happening, especially in a foreign continent. But that's a great storyline. I think what I'm looking forward to is the contrast. I'll say a bigger picture answer as well. The contrast between youth and veterans. So seeing the storylines of swimmers like Katie Ledecky, Caleb Dressel, Sarah Sjostrom unfold, and seeing how they perform versus up and coming swimmers such as Summer McIntosh, David Popovich, and Emma McKeon can be thrown into the veteran side. I think Chen Hai Yang is one who I'm really excited to see how he performs because he's not necessarily young, but he is very new to this level of swimming in terms of like being on podiums and winning and breaking world records. So I'm excited to see the contrast between swimmers that we've seen perform really well once or twice versus swimmers who have performed at multiple Olympics, and to see how both sides react to this Olympic Games.